Over to you, Isobel.
Good. Well, thank you all so much for coming along tonight. I'm Isobel. I've been coordinating Green Christians local groups for 12 years now, and much more recently, I've become a trustee. I hope that this workshop will be an opportunity to learn, but also to share and to contribute and to think how you might like to witness to Green Christians' mission wherever you are. I'm going to start by sharing screen with some slides and some thoughts on local groups and contacts before we then go on to hear from two local group leaders. So if you'll just bear with me while I share screen. There. Can you see just a slideshow image?
Yes.
Yes, good. So I thought I would begin by just thinking at random of some words that come into my mind when I think about Green Christians local groups. I started with imagination because ever since I first became local groups coordinator, this is what has always struck me so forcibly, is the group's imagination, the different events they've organized and the way they've responded to specific situations or new initiatives, locally, nationally, or even globally. Then the support, because the idea of local groups is built around support, creating opportunities to draw people together, to build awareness and support each other in a shared concern. The next two, perseverance and resilience, might seem like very similar words, but I thought they would reinforce each other. It isn't plain sailing for groups any more than it is for any of us in the green movement. Recently, I heard the climate scientist Tamsin Edwards, who you may have come across, comparing the way attitudes have improved lately to trying to batter a door down when suddenly the door opens from the inside and you almost fall into the room. And I loved the image. And it is wonderful how green issues have become more mainstream. But the truth on the ground is that there's still lots of indifference and uncertainty out there, as we all know, and any group is likely to have to persevere and or to show resilience at times. There are also issues like churches being too busy and preoccupied with other needs. So I thought it was important to feature those words just to recognize that it isn't always easy. I've then included the word leadership here for two reasons. Firstly, because any group obviously depends on leadership, without which it wouldn't exist. And this can be the main challenge. Some groups do struggle to continue if a leader moves away or is unable to go on. But I've also included the word to show how groups themselves show such great leadership locally, as they stand up for green issues and gather people together in a church or in an area. One obvious way that groups all differ has to be by place or location. Some are in large towns, others in villages, one or two across a wider area. You might think, as I would have, that groups would have more scope in a larger place, but that really isn't always the case. I remember one particular group which started in a city, but there was just so much other green activity locally that there wasn't space for a new group to form at that time. So village or town, city or any kind of area can all have different strengths. And now what we've started to find is that Zoom is opening up so many new possibilities, so that we're starting to see a move towards regional groups, and in a way taking away the emphasis on the word local in the expression local group. Then there's ecumenism. Another way that groups differ is that some are attached to one particular church or denomination, while others are ecumenical, probably usually, if they are, linked to their local churches together. I would say the majority of groups are ecumenical, but either can work well. And that leads on finally to scale, which depends so much, obviously, on location, but also on a group's aims. Groups might try small, simple ideas like sharing a regular green tip in their church newsletter, or they might operate on a larger scale, maybe by cooperating with other organizations locally to arrange a large event. I know quite a few of the groups have done that over the years. Either way, any group can make a difference. Move to the next slide. I hope you can see. Sort of visual might help with this. So those are some key words, but you might well be asking, what do local groups actually do? Of course, once again, they're all different. I really can't highlight that enough. But these are their main areas of focus, or at least they were before COVID struck, and hopefully they will be again. So you'll see here that the main focus is on events, which might be small or large, a film screening, a talk, an outing, a walk, a demonstration, or a competition. Then there are practical tasks, which could cover growing vegetables, managing a churchyard to encourage wildlife and other biodiversity, or helping with local conservation projects, or litter picking. I know the Clun group in Shropshire takes part every single year in a big community litter pick and really leads the way on that. So these kind of practical tasks are a chance to get back literally to the grassroots and to see everyday change on the ground. Then prayer and worship are obviously very important to groups as well. Some hold occasional or regular services on a green theme. Others meet for prayer or reflection or hold prayer walks. And then last but not least, there's lobbying, any kind of campaigning, which might be local, national or regional. This might be like lobbying this year on COP26, taking part in a local council consultation, like some have done on issues like a local wind turbine or other forms of green energy, or opposing local development. So some groups will cover all these different areas over the years at different times, but some will focus just on one area. They might mainly concentrate on making their churchyard more biodiverse, for instance, and then just hold an occasional event, or they might only ever be involved in one of those sectors. So move on again to the next slide. Thought we'd look at some figures. How many groups are there and how long have they been running? Green Christian, as you can see there, has 19 local groups and contacts. 18 of these are in England, one is in Wales. And since I designed this slide last week, we've actually got a new group, which we hope is forming in Scotland, meeting on Zoom as it is across the whole country. So that's really an example of how Zoom can open everything up to a much wider group of people. And the groups have been running for very varying lengths of time. The longest running group, I think, is Hereford, which recently celebrated 21 years since it was founded. And the most recent groups in Rugby and Southwest England have started just 6 months or less ago. I've always known that Green Christian's members were resourceful and committed, but never more so than when I have seen new groups actually form via Zoom during lockdown. Now that is special. Move on to the final slide, which is just a chance to mention the idea of local contacts. So this was an alternative to running an actual local group, which we introduced a few years ago. The idea was that people might find the idea of setting up and running a group too big a commitment. So agreeing to be a local contact in your area might be more flexible. It might be an opportunity to experiment, just to test the water and see what openings there might be locally, how people respond. It could lead on to setting up a group, but you might want to just continue as a contact. Try publicising Green Christian initiatives. Depend very much what's happening at the time and where you are. You could also cooperate with other organisations. For instance, I thought that if some people feel there are too many other green groups locally or too much other activity, then there wouldn't be space for an actual group, but you could still represent Green Christian to those other organisations and help publicise what we're doing if you are a local contact. So I'm now going to stop sharing screen and hand over to Staffan, who will go on to the next speaker.
Well, I think I've got a very small job, which is really looking forward to hearing from the first of two group conveners, leaders, and what it's like. So first of all, it's Martin. Would you tell us about yourself, who you are, where you are, and then launch into telling us about what it's like to run a group and your experiences.
I live in Cheltenham in Gloucestershire, and I'm dad and have been in Green Christian for a long time, and Barbara and I have been friends, and Ed, of course, before his death, sadly. So I know quite a lot of the old hands, and it's been really good being part of this network. So I'm going to share my screen, and I hope that this will be some way in which I can just sort of run through what I've been doing, what we've been doing here. Can you see my slide? You might want to change. Might want to change the pictures down the side, the thumbnails down the side, so as to eliminate them. I find that quite helpful, because then you can see the whole screen. So, how did we start? Is the first question. We were originally Christian Ecology Link in those days, back in 2009, when I actually started this particular group, and I had various contacts through the local council of churches and through. And with the help of the Gloucestershire Churches Environmental Justice Network and the Diocesan Justice and Peace people, we got together enough people for a day of reflection led by a marvelous American theologian called Frank Regan. And we found a free venue, and it had prayerful surroundings. There weren't any expenses involved at all. We got the leaflet out quite cheaply, and we just did a collection for the speaker. And that's really how we've gone on, with a very light touch on terms of admin. But it's quite important when you've had a talk like this to make a report, which I made and circulated to those who came. And that was the beginning of the mailing list. And then we from there, we went on to other talks, not frequently, but regularly over the years. We helped by having a T-shirt. I don't know whether you can see my T-shirt. I got one of the original ones on. And there's one of our members at the Greenbelt, which is quite near Cheltenham. We helped there with the stall. We worked with allies in getting our meetings together. There's a speaker from Russia, Brenton Bowles, who talked about the Climate Stewards program of offsetting. At that stage, we started moving to the church hall of my own church, which was the Roman Catholic Church in Cheltenham, where we can meet for free, which is good. We also made use of patrons. This Jonathan Porritt, who's lived in Cheltenham for some years, and gave his services, and gave us a very inspirational talk, of course, extremely well attended, because he's very well known. We also felt we could perhaps approach people like Bishop Atkinson, who gave us a splendid theological talk on one of the Psalms, and that was really one of the highlights of our time. So don't be afraid to go for some big names, even if you're a local group. That's my message. People love good pictures and slideshows, and Mary Colwell is absolute ace at this. I don't know if you've ever seen any of her work. She used to work for the BBC, and is a very lovely speaker and writer, of course, as well. And practical talks go down very well. We attracted quite a lot of people who weren't people of faith at all to our meeting with a professor of renewable energy from Leicester, a lovely man. And then think outside the box is another tip I give you. Here we got the director of Pax Christi to talk to us, Secretary of Pax Christi, and she gave us a lovely talk, very relevant to our theme, of course, of protecting the earth, because the damage done by weapons is so obvious. And we must remember our origins. We started off within the Ecology Party, as it was then, now the Green Party, and we met there, and we realized that it was good to have a Christian presence in politics and good to have a green presence in the churches. Those are our two main thoughts when we first started this lovely charity. So where are we now? We're recognized in local churches and in the community to some extent. I get invitations to speak when there's an Eco Church Award, for instance, and the Cheltenham Borough Council's Cheltenham Zero launch on behalf of Christians. We don't have many actual Green Christian members locally, but I don't think that's so important as the number you get on your mailing list and people who can keep in contact that way. And we have a regular fortnightly Zoom climate prayer, which some of you have been at on Thursday lunchtimes. And we're making plans. We took part in the season of creation last year, and we're going to make plans this year. We hope for the same sort of event, which was the Stations of Creation. This beautiful banner was done by one of those who took part. We went around one of the parks and found places where we could talk about aspects of creation. We had 7 stations, one for all the 7 days in Genesis. So what helps us? Well, Isobel, who's just spoken, is a great help, and she's been around as long as we've had the group, really, and has been really regular in ringing up and contacting us and keeping us thinking of what we should be doing. And the forum, the C-Link forum, is very helpful, I find. It's so informal, anybody can take part in that. And the magazine, of course, was very professionally edited, especially in recent years. I think what really helps is the friendships which build up over time. And that is, for me, a form of spiritual direction, because I think some of us find it lacking on green issues within our own churches. One of the great milestones of this period is Laudato Si, which is the encyclical, the teaching Pope Francis gave us 6 years ago now. And as a result of that, the animators training program, which I took part in last year, and I got my certificate. So I'm very proud of it. And that enables you as an animator it really motivates you as an animator to talk about the theological basis for our green commitments and to spread that thinking. It's not a competitor for Green Christian anyway. It's an international organization, the animators body, and it's very much to be looked at by everybody who's concerned with the element of creation in our faith. So thank you for listening, and I will now stop sharing and pass over back to Isobel.
Well, wonderful. Thank you very much for that. So I'm going to now hand over to Tom in a moment to introduce yourself and then talk through your piece. Just to say, as we do it, that we've been messaging one another here, and we sort of think that probably this is such a great opportunity to do breakout groups, because we can distribute Isobel, Martin and Tom in between the groups and give you a chance to chat about some of the issues a bit more closely, perhaps. So that's what we were sort of thinking post starting this. So Tom, do tell us about yourself and about your group.
So I'm Tom Piotrowski, originally from Poland, but I ended up living in Worcester, in beautiful part of this country. Trying to think now, 16 years ago now. Martin and I are neighbours. I live just a little bit further up M5. And what I'm going to share is just a very brief history and some reflections on what we've managed to do since this group has started. So this is not a quote from the Bible. In the beginning there was friendship, and in this particular case, my friendship with Peter Grimwood, who happens to be a fellow local political activist. So Peter has been involved with Green Christian for quite some time. He invited me to the fortnightly prayer meeting organized by Martin, which he did mention. I came along, participated in few meetings, and then thought, well, with the COVID and everything else happening and a little bit of extra time saved on not having to travel up and down the motorway for work purposes. What about starting a group here in Worcester? And the rest is history, I suppose. So it's as simple as that. I think time and COVID, oddly enough, helped us to get things off the ground. The majority of things which we did were based online for a number of reasons, and I think COVID would be the main reason. The first talk, so we focused on, I'll mention a few other things later on, but the first thing we did, we asked Martin to talk about, he did mention the training for the moderators, the program for the moderators who try to introduce people to Christians and non-Christians to the message of Laudato Si. So we invited Martin to give us our first talk. And from then onwards, we thought about trying to go out and invite various interesting people to meet with us. The way I'm going to share just a few examples of those talks to give you an idea about the spectrum of topics, the kind of guests we had. Those two very familiar, friendly, lovely faces of Martin and Margot Hodson. They came along as our second guests to talk about, so this is still early days of the pandemic, about the pandemic and what it can teach us about responding to the climate emergency. They shared a presentation. It was a lovely evening. The way that we advertise those talks, so I've created a little Facebook page, and then did a little bit of work around making sure that the right kind of people see the adverts when we put the talk on. So I would feed the beast when I say this. I would give £5 or maybe £10 to Facebook, and they would do the clever algorithm thing where I can choose, trying to make sure that the talk shows up on the timeline if somebody's on Facebook. Of all the people who describe themselves as Christians, or there are certain age group or certain sort of outlook or certain profession and so on. You can do those kind of things online, and depending on a talk, we had anywhere from sort of 20 to 40, 50 people on a few occasions coming along to those talks. Just as an example, the lady who is an engineer by training, but happens to be a Green Christian as well, Jenny Cooke. She came along to talk about the brand new train station just outside of Worcester. So she talked about the technical side of involvement, and considering that she was the receiving engineer working with the National Rail to open the station. She actually took on board quite a lot of feedback with regards to the connectivity of that place to the rest of the travel infrastructure where we live in Worcester. Going to things a little bit more spiritual. I'm not going to say impractical, spiritual, because this is the foundation. I think it starts with prayer and reflection. We welcome Christopher Southgate, who talked about the paradigm shift in our relationship with God's world. We had a lovely group of local volunteers who call themselves Wedge, Worcestershire Environmental Group, and they work with faith groups, various community groups on increasing biodiversity in where they live. As a result, they've been put in touch with a number of churches who very kindly have begun to help us advertise those meetings, those events in their church newsletters. We had a speaker, Sister Jessica from Marknell Abbey, just on the other side of M5. Again, it just happens to be very local to where we live in Worcestershire. So she talked about monasticism as a model to learn when we think about sustainable living. Not for a moment, I think there was a suggestion that we should be all becoming monks. religious, people. But the talk was probably one of the better attended, I think, and fascinating as well. The Macron Abbey itself is a great example of sustainability, self-sufficiency in many ways. So that was a very interesting talk. Then George Dow, I did mention spirituality, which is very important. We had him over as well, talking about the Christian way of life, the spirituality of the Green Christian movement. One of the last things early spring this year, our city was one of the local councils which declared the climate emergency. As you can imagine, it's all about the politics, and whether it's the gospel and the reasons for Jesus dying, or whether it's the local politics here. We thought that it would be good to have the council involved in this, so we gathered the local faith community leaders, including our well, I say our, we have one bishop here, but he's sort of an honorary bishop for the Catholics, Methodists, and everybody else. He's a brilliant guy, Bishop John. He opened up the session, which was led by a sustainability officer from the Worcester City Council, and we talked about the role of faith communities, which should and how they should be in getting involved with what the local government is trying to do. Absolutely shamelessly, we stole the idea of the fortnightly prayer meetings from Martin. It does work. Quite clearly, we're not as pious as the Cheltenham bunch. We meet once a month. But in all seriousness, it's a lovely way of rotating both the speakers who are being invited to share reflection, and it's also creating this sense of buy-in and participation from different churches. So we had the Anglicans, the Methodists, the Catholics, the Baptists, I think, as well, leading those prayer sessions. In terms of next, a number of churches here have been introduced to the pilgrims for the climate justice. So you will be familiar with the COP26 Camino program and the pilgrimage that they are making. So a couple of churches at least have been offered to host events when the pilgrims get here later on in September. We are setting up a session with our local MP on the aspirations that the faith communities have when it comes to the Global Climate Summit in November in Glasgow. And also we are discussing with the university and also the local council here what kind of economics. So this is something planned for later on, early autumn, September, October time, a seminar on the kind of economics that's suitable for the age of the climate crisis. So this is us. As I said, it's not really very original. The group is very young in the sense that we've been meeting together mainly online for since the pandemic sort of brought us together. It was a blessing in disguise, I suppose, in the sense that I suppose I had a little bit of time to help Peter and under his and Martin's wise guidance, we've managed to get this off the ground, and we keep it running as far as the local activities go. So that's me. If I stop sharing the screen, and if you've got any questions during the discussion, then we can have a chat together.
Wow, that's great. Well, now we're going to go into breakout groups, unless you've told Barbara you don't want to be in one, for 10 minutes, and we're going to get Isobel, Martin, or Tom, to just chat about what it's like and then what resounded for you, what issues, what questions. Welcome back, everyone. If you're like us, we just ran out of time. We could have kept talking. So thank you so much for the Tom and the people in my group. So now we've got a bit more of a sort of a sharing of thoughts and things jointly between us, and a debate and discussion. What are the key themes that have come up for you? Is there any particular points or insights you'd like to share with us that you'd like to bring to us? So either put your hand up like this, because I can see you all, or you can do the good old electronic hand. There's a reactions, and you can go like this. Can you see the hand? And at that point, if you do that, then you go to the top of the screen and we'll definitely see you. So any thoughts and questions, any comments? Is that Andrew that I could see, or were you just scratching your head? I think that was a head scratch. Who else would like to share any thoughts and perspectives?
I'll come in with a couple of things. I don't think was mentioned. You don't have to be card-carrying Green Christian members to be a part of a Green Christian group. So you don't need to think to yourselves, gosh, there aren't Green Christian members in my town, my village, my area. We do insist on one person in the group being a Green Christian member, but the others don't have to be. Lovely they are. And the second is, being an ecumenical organisation, whatever church you come from is not just potential people joining a Green Christian group from your church. It be churches together, it can be any of the denominations. We are very much an umbrella, a community of all the Christian churches. So there are just those 2 points to throw out to you.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. Isobel? You need to go off mute, Isobel.
Yes.
And then we'll ask Catherine next.
Yes, I was just going to respond to the point that Barbara was just making about ecumenism, how it came up in the breakout group I was in about how one actually goes about reaching people ecumenically. We were agreeing that this differs in different areas and that they don't all have a very active churches together organization just on the spot. So the suggestion that I came up with was just contacting clergy or church representatives or people you know from churches of other denominations in your immediate area and just throwing the suggestion at them, seeing if they're interested in sharing in a group. I don't know if anyone else would like to add to that idea or approach. That was all.
I'm looking out. Oh, Tom.
I mean, my experience is that the faith leaders and congregation leaders very often, for all kinds of reasons, simply don't see environmental issues and don't necessarily see all the connections. For all the good reasons, they are under a lot of stress time-wise and tasks and various other things. In the case of the Catholic churches, for instance, it's the sort of responsibility share situation where the sort of ordained ministers have probably more admin side of things to do than anybody else. But once you sort of break through and have this personal relationship, in every single case, I've noticed that there is actually an element of competition. If somebody hosts, well, we are not worse, and we have something to share and to add. So whether it's volunteering to share a reflection or whether it's volunteering to I mean, this issue with there's a chap who lives locally and he's coordinating the response to the environmental pilgrimage going up to Glasgow. The churches are falling up. I mean, the only thing we need is thousands of pilgrims here because we've got certainly places to put them up. So I think it's getting this relationship established, and then I can't see any reasonable objection if you are prepared to do some weightlifting and do the job of organizing an event and giving the priest, the minister, or whoever it is a helping hand.
Well, it seems to me, Tom, that that is something you do really well, the relationship building, and I've respected how you've managed to get key people together in the Worcester group, certainly. Catherine, you put your hand up earlier. Catherine Clough, do you want to sort of share a thought?
It was a question, really. So I'm wondering if any of you groups use the newsletters that Green Christian produce, or any of the materials, and how you find that.
If I can respond, as I said, Green Christian magazine is extremely good to my mind, and I have a standing order for a dozen or so copies, which I can distribute. And whenever you have a meeting, it's very good to be able to put out a stall with leaflets in them. There's a man called Jeff Perrett who has a wonderful library of stuff, which he's very willing to send you if you are having a stall. There are banners. And generally, the materials are really excellent, and there's a terrific team going on behind the scenes, and we really owe a lot to them for doing that. Going back to one other thing which was said earlier, there's absolutely nothing, it seems to me, within Green Christian about our core insights and understandings and concerns, which divides us theologically. This is a wonderful thing. You're working together in a properly ecumenical way, and this is just, to my mind, a great joy.
Any more thoughts? Yes, Isobel.
I was just going to add to answer Catherine's question that one resource which local groups particularly mentioned to me that they really find helpful is the prayer diary. They use that quite a lot, either at meetings or events they might be organising, or if they're having something like a prayer walk, or else that they can feed that through, as it were, to their ministers and try and get the prayers used in services.
Jane.
I'd just ask what people think are the sort of best way to start a group at the moment, whether the groups on Zoom, whether that's a preferable platform than trying to meet in person, particularly if you're trying to do it across a wider geographical area. Just any thoughts people want to share about that, Zoom versus in person?
Well, I certainly feel that Zoom's had this wonderful benefit of bringing people together more easily without travelling and booking of halls and things. There are drawbacks, as we all know, and we would all love to be able to get a bit more eye contact with people we know, or especially those we don't know very well. So I think Zoom is not going to go away, and but on the other hand, there is real life as well.
Dick, do you have a comment before I go to?
This is very pertinent to starting a group in the rugby area. We started in the pandemic, and to some extent we're still in the pandemic, and we've been meeting exclusively through Zoom, and it's limiting. It has its pluses, but it has some serious minuses. We've managed to get together a database of about 25 interested people in the rugby area, but growing the group, if we can only meet through Zoom, doesn't seem to be working very well. So what we're going to do, we're going to gamble, and we've booked a church meeting room for June the 27th, when we can hopefully, and here's the hopeful bit, have the confidence to come together and meet one another face to face, and see some real people. And what the little group of us who are planning this are going to do is to produce a little flyer of the things that we're talking about doing, and then that will hopefully lead to some good conversations over cake and tea and coffee. So we see a real need to try and meet one another in a three-dimensional form.
Okay, we're going to go to Isobel, then Cordelia, and then Christopher and Tom.
Yes, well, I was just going to respond to the question about Zoom, just saying that I think it does have real strengths. Obviously, it has weaknesses too. But what we're seeing is that it is opening up new possibilities for more of a regional aspect, as I was saying before, like or even national in the case of the New Scotland group. And so I think it's important to consider where it might lead. And for some people where a group just might not be viable in their immediate area, then trying to form something on Zoom across a region could be really hopeful, and it would be great to see more of those.
Okay, Cordelia.
I just wanted to say that we need to remember that we are safe when we are outside. So arranging a meeting in a local park on these lovely summer evenings is not a big problem. And the other thing is that as long as you are ventilating an indoor space, you're okay. But making use of parks, church gardens, and that leads into enjoying the natural world. So,
thank you.
and that is good for the rest of the summer anyway. And then perhaps we'll have to go back to Zoom, in the autumn.
What a great comment. Thank you. Well, we are now pretty well running out of time, but I've got 3 people, Christopher, Tom and Andrew. So could I ask you each for a brief comment, and then we're going to close in prayer. And if you want to stay on for further discussion thereafter, that's what we'll do. Christopher.
Yes, just a response to the possibilities of Zoom. I don't think you can launch a group on a Zoom basis. That's been my experience of Scotland so far anyway, and it's only been a couple of meetings in. I think at some point you're going to have to meet. And from what I can hear from the excellent speakers we've had this evening, there has been people who've met before and then have used Zoom to widen their influence or cement their influence. I think there are some questions to be asked about whether Zoom is the way to start. That's really it.
Tom.
I think in my mind, it doesn't have to be a dichotomy. It doesn't have to be one versus the other. They could perfectly complement each other in ways that can be helpful. So if Dick, with your planned get together, the physical meeting, I would suggest take absolutely loads of photos, and then when you are next on Zoom, whether it's a prayer meeting or whatever it is, make sure to share them as well and make people jealous of all those cakes and delicious cups of coffee as well, because I think for both have a place, and I wish we could do more of a 3D interaction, but here we are.
Andrew.
Yeah, because G7 was down in Cornwall, so obviously we had kind of experience of 1 or 2 quite major things happening. One major thing that did happen was a CAFOD sponsored event, which was about people of faith as opposed to Christians. Oh, sorry, I think, are you still getting me?
Yes.
So what we had was pagans, Muslims, Buddhists, a whole range of different people. So I think, maybe it's a little bit too prescriptive just simply to think in terms of the Christians who might be part of this, particularly if your group isn't labelled Green Christian. It could be holding conversations with other people of other faiths.
Yes, indeed. And I've got to know so many people through Zoom in the last year. I haven't met anybody in Green Christian physically. I haven't met anybody face to face yet. I'm looking forward to doing that. Well, look, we are now out of time because we promise to let you go after an hour.